On the 19th of June, 1767, in a small stone village in southern France, a group of men laid a dead animal on a table. They had been hunting it for 3 years. It had defeated the king's best soldiers and 2 of the greatest hunters in Europe. A local surgeon opened the animal to examine it, and according to the men in that room, when he looked inside, nobody spoke. What he found is written in documents that still exist today. But to understand why it silenced that room, you need the whole story. Because everything you are about to hear actually happened. It is preserved in church burial records, royal letters, and newspaper archives. And in 260 years, despite the theories, despite the science, it has never been fully explained. The Gevaudan was the kind of place maps forgot. A high, cold plateau of granite and pine, with fog that could swallow a person whole. In the summer of 1764, a young woman tending cattle near the forest of Mercois saw something come out of the tree line. She survived because the bulls in her herd drove the animal back. She described it as like a wolf, but not a wolf. The size of a calf. A strange reddish coat with a dark stripe along the spine. A tail like nothing she had seen. Nobody believed her. On the 30th of June, in the parish of Saint-Étienne-de-Lougdare, a 14-year-old shepherdess named Jeanne Boulet was buried. The priest recorded the cause of death in the margin of the register. Killed, he wrote, by the ferocious beast, la bête féroce. That entry still exists, a single line of ink in a parish register, the first official victim of what France would soon call, simply, the beast. Through July and August, the attacks spread. A boy here, a young shepherdess there, always in daylight, always when the victim was alone, and the survivors all repeated the same impossible details. The animal did not go for the legs, the way wolves take livestock. It went, always, for the head. No wolf in living memory had killed that way. This was something else. By autumn, the region was in open panic. Farmers armed themselves with scythes and homemade spears. Children were locked indoors. Whole parishes stopped working the fields. In a land that lived by its harvest, fear had become more powerful than hunger. The Bishop of Mende ordered public prayers. In church after church, the people of Gevaudan knelt and asked to be delivered from the beast. In October, hunters finally cornered a huge animal and shot it at close range. It fell. Then it got up and walked back into the trees. Witnesses swore it was hit again and rose again. Men who had hunted wolves all their lives stood and watched it walk away. The soldiers assumed they had wounded a large wolf and that it would crawl away somewhere and die. But the survivors kept repeating one detail that made no sense. Wolves fear humans, they take animals, not people, and they scatter at the sound of a gun. This creature stepped over sheep to reach the shepherd. It was not hunting the way an animal hunts. It was selecting, watching, choosing which human it would take next. And that winter, the whole of Europe was about to learn its name. By winter, the story had escaped the mountains. Newspapers in Paris and across Europe reported on the man-eating Beast of Gévaudan. In England, the papers openly mocked France. An entire kingdom apparently could not kill one animal. King Louis XV took the mockery personally. The beast was no longer a rural tragedy. It was an insult to the crown. He sent professional cavalry. Dragoons under a captain named Duhamel rode into the hills with orders to bring the creature back, dead. Duhamel organized enormous hunts, some sweeping the hills with tens of thousands of local men walking in lines through the snow. They killed roughly 100 wolves, ordinary wolves. The attacks did not stop. They barely slowed. In the town of Mendi, the bishop wrote that God had sent the creature as a punishment. Sermons were preached against it, as if against a person. And then, in January 1765, something happened that turned the beast into a national legend. A 12-year-old boy named Jacques Porteface was guarding cattle with 6 younger children when the beast attacked and seized the smallest of them. The children did not run. 7 small figures in a freezing marsh, facing a creature that armies had failed to stop. Armed with sticks tipped with iron, they fought it, step by step, into the soft ground of a marsh, until it released the boy. The story reached Versailles. The king rewarded the children personally and paid for the boy's education. France had its first heroes. And the crown raised the bounty to 6,000 livres, more than most men of Gevaudan would earn in a lifetime. Professional hunters poured into the region, fortune seekers, ex-soldiers, men with famous names and expensive rifles. The greatest of them were a Norman father and son named Denival, said to have killed more than 1,000 wolves between them. They arrived in February, studied the reports, and declared the hunt would be short. They set poisoned baits. The beast ignored them. They tracked it with trained hounds. It doubled back behind the hunting parties and attacked villages they had just left. It was as if the creature understood what a hunt was and had learned how to use one. By summer, the Denivals were recalled. The most celebrated wolf hunters in France went home, defeated, and said little about it. The attacks that summer came faster than ever. The registers of 1765 record victim after victim through the finest weather France could offer. In August, at Paulhac, a young woman named Marie-Jeanne Vallée was crossing a footbridge when the beast attacked in broad daylight. She was carrying a homemade spear. She planted her feet and she drove it into the animal's chest. It reared back and retreated. A statue of her stands in the region today, the Maid of Gévaudan. But here is what should have been impossible. Within days of taking a spear to the chest, the beast attacked again. Some said the spear had never touched flesh. Others said it had. And that was the frightening part. Whatever was walking those hills could survive bullets, poison, hounds, and cold iron. Or, as some in Gevaudan had started whispering, it was not only an animal. The word they used was one the church did not allow them to say out loud: loup-garou. Werewolf. The one word the church forbade. And in the winter of 1765, people whispered it in every parish of Gevaudan. That autumn, the king sent one last man, the finest shot in France, and for 9 weeks, the whole world believed he had ended it. The king's final card was Francois Antoine, his personal gun-bearer, officially the finest marksman in the kingdom. He arrived in June with royal authority, a team of huntsmen, and the full attention of Versailles. On the 21st of September 1765, in the woods near the royal abbey of Chastel, Antoine's party cornered an enormous wolf. Antoine fired. The animal went down, rose, and charged him. A second volley finally stopped it. When they measured the body, they understood the panic. It was among the largest wolves anyone present had ever recorded. Survivors of attacks were brought to see the carcass. Several recognized scars on its, including, some said, the scar of a spear wound to the chest. The wolf of Chastel was stuffed, crated, and sent to Versailles, where courtiers lined up to see the monster from the gazettes. Antoine was decorated, rewarded, and celebrated. The newspapers announced it across Europe. The Beast of Gévaudan was dead. The court moved on. The papers moved on. Official France closed the file. For 9 weeks, the hills of Gévaudan were quiet. No attacks, no sightings. It seemed the nightmare was finally, truly over. Then, 3 days before Christmas, a shepherdess did not come home. 2 boys were attacked at La Bessière in the same month. And in the spring, the burials resumed in the parish registers, the same handwriting as before, the same words as before. La bête féroce, the ferocious beast. It had never died at all. But this time, something had changed. Versailles did not respond. Paris did not print it. The beast had been declared dead by the king himself. And nobody contradicts a king. For a year and a half, the people of Gevaudan faced the creature completely alone. No dragoons, no bounty, no newspapers, just villagers burying their dead quietly in a silence ordered from above. Local officials wrote letters begging for help. Some of those letters survive in the archives. Help never came. This is the part of the story historians find hardest to explain. The attacks of 1766 and 67 are among the best documented of all, and they happened in near total official silence. Roughly 30 more people died after the beast was officially killed. Look at that number again. The deadliest phase of the Beast of Gévaudan happened after France stopped believing in it. In the spring of 1767, a young local nobleman, the Marquis d'Appachet, barely 20 years old, did what the crown would not. He organized the hunts himself. Local men, local guns, no medals waiting at Versailles. And on the 19th of June, on the slopes of Montmouchet, 300 men swept the woods of La Sonne d'Auvers. One of them was a farmer in his 60th year, a quiet, religious man the whole region knew. He walked with a prayer book in one hand and a double-barreled musket over his shoulder. His name was Jean Chastel. Remember that name, because this story is about to fold back on itself. What happened next became the most famous minute in the history of French folklore. The story, as Gévaudan still tells it, Chastel was reading his prayer book when the beast stepped out of the tree line and stopped, watching him. He finished his page, closed the book, removed his spectacles, then he raised his gun and fired once. Later tellings add the detail the whole world now remembers, that his bullets were cast from a melted medal of the Virgin Mary, silver bullets. That detail came from later writers. But it is why every werewolf story ends the same way. The silver bullet was born here. What is documented is this. The animal Chastel killed was carried from village to village so survivors could look it in the face. The attacks stopped completely, forever. After 3 years and roughly 100 dead, the hills of Gevaudan finally went silent. And at the town of Sargus, a surgeon opened the carcass to examine it. But it's what he recorded next that people still argue about, 260 years later. The report described an animal that did not quite match a wolf. The teeth were wrong, the proportions were wrong. Witnesses described a coat of colors no one had seen on any wolf in the region. And inside the stomach, the report records what the men in that room saw for themselves. Human. That silence was the sound of men realizing that the monster of their childhood was real and lying on a table in front of them. The body was so decomposed by the summer heat that it was buried before it could reach the king. The one piece of physical evidence, gone. So what was the Beast of Gévaudan? 260 years later, there are 3 serious answers. Theory 1, wolves. France had thousands of them, and skeptics argue that panic and newspapers fused several large wolves into one monster. But wolves do not shrug off point-blank gunfire or ignore poisoned bait, and Gevaudan's shepherds knew wolves. Whatever they saw, they insisted was not that. Huge head, strange tail, a hyena or a wolf-dog hybrid, escaped from some nobleman's private menagerie. An animal raised by humans would explain the most chilling detail of all: no fear of man. Modern naturalists call this the strongest scientific candidate. Then there is Theory 3, the one investigators keep returning to. The beast did not act alone. It was not only a beast. Attacks clustered in strange patterns, and one modern French researcher pointed at a name you already know, Jean Chastel. His family kept enormous dogs. His son, Antoine, was an outcast who lived wild in the hills, and legend claims he once kept exotic animals, one documented coincidence. In late summer 1765, the Chastels were jailed after a dispute with the hunters. The local attacks paused. Did a troubled man raise and direct a killing animal? And did his father end the horror to end the suspicion? There is no proof. There never will be. But the attacks stopped the day Jean Chastel pulled the trigger and never resumed. Whatever the truth, the beast achieved something no monster before it ever had. It was reported by newspapers, hunted by a state, and examined by a surgeon. And it still became a legend. Every werewolf film you have ever seen, the unstoppable creature, the silver bullet, all of it carries DNA from those 3 years in Gevaudan. About 100 people are recorded in the parish registers. Real names, real dates, in ink that has outlasted every theory. The monster faded into folklore. The handwriting did not. The werewolf is not a story we invented to scare children. It is a story something real earned. If you want more documented cases where folklore has a body count, subscribe. The next file is already open.